Hello and welcome to Fireside Fairytales. If you've never been here before, my name is Rory, and welcome. Thank you for watching, or at least giving it a shot. What we do here is a little bit of narrative, I guess. And what we do on Tuesday nights, which is tonight, is we read old folklore and fairy tales aloud with a little bit of sound effects and a little few voices from moi. From some of it quite recently translated. In some cases, I might be the first person reading it in English in any particularly public way, which might be the case for some of the stories tonight, to be honest. However, the channel also has a ride-along that we do on Thursdays because we just like narrative here. Now, if you are here live, there is a live chat, which is widely considered the most intelligent grouping of people in the world. Not my decision, not my claim. That's science. So if you want to absorb the brain kings and queens of our chat, then you should join it and follow along with the story and give your own comments if you have any. However, if you're not live, that's fine. You have your own advantage, which is down in the description below. There will be timestamps that let you jump ahead to whatever story interests you the most. Tonight we're doing 4 stories. Some quite short, some a little longer. Most of them are reasonably short. And they all sort of share a theme of other realms, in particular realms underground. Whether that is perceptions of hell or the homes of dwarves or so on and so forth. They're all part of German folklore. We will end off on one that isn't really about hell or underground, but it is about another realm. Yeah, you can jump ahead to whichever one interests you the most. The one about hell is the first one, so if you came here because of the icon, stick around for the first one. Or, if you're not here live, click on the comments. All our stories tonight come to us from the translator Jürgen Hubert, who has his own Patreon. He's a contemporary translator of old German folklore, much of which, has never been translated into English. His operation there is called Sunken Castles, Evil Poodles. You can support it and get these stories and more. I've read tons from it, but certainly still haven't even read probably half of it. There's a lot of stories there for only a few bucks a month. Let me take a look at the chat. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing tonight, although I think I pretty much already said it, and we'll get straight into stories. Zombie Wolf says, first with cool sunglasses. That's right, Zombie Wolf. You are first. And all the glory and rewards that come with that. Uncle Kitty says, howdy. Hello, Uncle Kitty. Hope your job is going well. I know that you said it can be a mixed bag. Tammy says here, I'm here on time. There's no on time. You don't need to be on time. You be here when you're comfortable and ready to hear stories. No obligation. Can't wait for tonight. Look like it's going to be a good one. Well, thank you, Tammy. It is good to see you. Thank you for watching. Yeah, there it is. Uncle Kitty says security guard, which is Uncle Kitty's job. It's one of those odd jobs where it's either boring, terrifying, or total BS. I had a friend who was a security guard for a few years, and it traumatized him so badly he went to grad school. Zombie Wolf says, I'm sure Rory will give you a cookie for your efforts, Tammy. If you don't mind it being gluten-free, then actually, to be honest, like short crust stuff like that kind of almost is better gluten-free. And I know that's a tough sell on a lot of people, but like, it's just a bit sweeter because it doesn't, anyways, don't get me off into food science. All right, and I see Witchery. Witchery says Thursday where we do chaos. Sometimes, for sure, sometimes. It's a lot more open on Thursdays. All right. Jumpstore says, loves the title. It's like Rory's telling us personally to go to hell. You got to catch those eyes on YouTube. And GS is here. Hello, GS. Tammy says, Rory, you always say that, but a minute late and I miss all the welcoming. Well, I'll make a specific effort of welcoming you if you come here a bit late. Now, if I ever do any live shows and you guys, I don't see that ever happening, but if I do, and there's like people filtering in the first like 15 minutes, as a person who used to be an instructor, that would get on my nerves. But in this setting, it doesn't matter. All right. Well, sorry, I'm just bringing up some windows so we can get to our stories. Jump Store says, should I add gluten-free to Rory's restrictions alongside ginger? Well, ginger's far less of a problem. Like, I can kind of have a bit of it, and at most I might get some flushed ears. The gluten-free thing is a much more significant problem. But anyways, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about folklore. And the first one, story of the night that we're going to look at is called Cart Drivers Witness a Mirage. But I do want to give the translator's notes, or a piece of the translation notes at the start here before I get into it, which I don't normally do, but it was an important enough distinction that I thought it was relevant for people how they perceive this story. So I believe this is Jurgen's translation note, but sometimes these are someone else's, but I'm pretty sure this is Jurgen's translation note. It says the original title as of the Verlot or Offen or to ape means to mock someone. So a literal translation would be the cart drivers are being mocked. However, allusions, especially from infernal sources like here, tend to have strongly negative associations in German folklore, as in Blendwerk, an act of blinding someone to the truth. Hence, mirage seemed to be a more appropriate term here. So, mirage, it's not 100% the way we use mirage, and for that reason, I thought the translation note was interesting. So our first tale tonight is called The Cart Drivers Witness a Mirage, and you can probably hear them approaching already. There they are. It comes to us translated by Jürgen Hubert, who is a translator of old German folklore, who has a Patreon that you can support him, and you absolutely should. Add a pinned comment down below when the video is no longer live. Let's catch up with those cart drivers. Now, once several cart drivers drove their carts filled with wine along the royal highway from Gotha to Frankfurt that leads past the base of Hörselberg mountain. Dusk had broken just before they had reached the village of Schönau, where they usually rested for the night, and when they beheld a strange apparition. For at a spot where they'd never been, where there had never been an opening before, the mountain opened up. Curious, they stepped closer to see what was burning inside, as a fiery blaze seemed to be shining as brightly as that of an iron foundry. But they were frightened greatly when they now beheld a multitude of living and dead people in a sea of flames. Some of these people were familiar to them, and these included many of the rich wine traders who had frequently given them cargo. They were now punished with fire for mixing wine with water, or even sweetened the wine with poisons. The cart drivers were overcome with dread when one of them screamed at the top of his lungs, "Oh, may God deliver us!" Then everything disappeared at once, and the cart drivers made the sign of the cross and blessed themselves. Well, they drove their horses to hurry so that they could get away from that uncanny location as quickly as possible. There's a slim possibility that I've read this before, but I went through all the videos, almost all my videos, from the last year, which is when I started reading this work, today, and I couldn't find it. And I suppose I've never really explained this, but what will happen is I'll read, I don't know, 20 stories and then pick like 4 or 5 for the stream. And what starts to happen is I can't remember if I read that story and didn't pick it, or if I've never read that story on stream, or sorry, I read that story on stream and I did read it. So it's sometimes hard for me to remember, because I have read this story. I read this story probably about a year ago, but I think I never read it here. So what we see there is something that we, honestly, you don't see that often in folklore, which is a pretty direct description of hell. You usually get sort of bad vibes and you smell smoke and stuff, but to actually sort of see it is a bit unique. But of course, they are likely taking from the world's most famous fan fiction, which was Dante's Inferno. Zombie Wolf says, speaking of hell, Rory. Witchery says, may I suggest a Google Sheet to abuse like your poor Google Doc? I probably will. I had a document and it went with my computer. It just happened to be on a drive at the time that my computer died. It happened to be on a drive that was not being backed up to the cloud. I'm getting some personal questions. I'll address them quickly, but I'm going to get back to the stories. Zombie Wolf said, speaking of hell, Rory, you never said who your favorite has-been hotel character is. I've only seen 2 episodes, so I don't think I've picked anybody. But you didn't share with the class. I don't really have one yet. Yeah, sorry. If I had to like pick out a hat, I doubt I even know their names. They rarely use them. I mean, the radio character is cool. I don't know if I actually like them, but the design and the idea of it's very cool. Rory said his partner likes Hell of a Boss too. Yeah, she likes both. Did you watch it, Rory? Who's your favorite Hell of a Boss character? I think I've watched every available episode of Hell of a Boss. I can't think of his name. I mean, I guess in the first season I did like, I don't remember his name, but Al Daddy. But mainly because I found him to be like a compelling piece of drama. I think as an actual like character that I enjoy, I like the couple. Again, I don't know their names, but Mealy or whatever, and her boyfriend or husband. Jump sources, that's Alistair. Anyways, I recently, I will add though, while I get to the next story, I went to a fan expo, and the voice for Blitzo and the character I just named, the more stable guy, his whatever. Anyways, but it's there, and I didn't realize he's the voice for Invader Zim, and I forget the name of it, but the 2 Beaver show. Moxie and Millie, that's right. I like Moxie and Millie. Okay. I'm going to read our next story, which is actually the realm of the Subterraneans, but I'm going to tack on the beginning of that story a little 1-sentence clip that I liked that was in this collection called The Other World. It's not a story. It's not even really an anecdote. It's just sort of like the way you would open a story, and I liked it. But we're really going to read the realm of the Subterraneans. So our next story is the realm of the Subterraneans, which again comes to us from Sunken Castle's Evil Poodles, which is translations by Jürgen Hubert, who you can support at the pinned comment down below. But I'm going to read The Other World, which is a very little short stub of a thing, unrelated to the realm of Subterraneans, except in theme. Among the children of Stockheim, it was said in secret, beneath this world there is another inhabited world, which is surrounded by wide, deep waters. These must be crossed to reach the lower world. But now nobody believes in that anymore. See, not really a story. Just cool words. The realm of the Subterraneans. There can be absolutely no doubt that the Subterraneans exist. However, some people would deny it and claim that the notion of the little people is just an old legend. But what do these oh so smart people say about the following instance from the Kamen district, which proves not only the existence of the Subterraneans, but also that domestic animals, springs, wells, and so forth exist down there. See, the farmers of a village dug a well. For this purpose, they drove a deep shaft into the ground, but no matter how deep they dug, no water appeared. They were about to give up, when suddenly a mighty surge of water rose up and filled the entire well shaft. And within a few moments, this was not the end of it, though. The water rose up beyond the rim and burst out onto the street. And from there it flowed into the houses and gardens, and it seemed like the entire village would drown. The strangest part of this was that a snow-white goose rose up from the water. It was of marvelous beauty, of an entirely different nature than the geese of the surface world. And the people sought to catch it, but no matter how cunning their strategies were, the beautiful animal evaded capture. Finally, they gave up on the hunt, as the rising peril of the waters presented a more pressing concern. Fortunately, an old woman appeared among them who could do more than just eat bread, which is a turn of phrase meaning she could do uncanny things. She immediately realized that the well was dug too deeply and had reached that realm of the Subterraneans, and so she thus hurried home and fetched a feather bed and waded closely to the well hole and then threw the bed inside. And as soon as this occurred, well, the water level began to fall. And it didn't take long until the well was just like any other well. However, the feather bed and the marvelous goose vanished beneath the waters and never reappeared again. Now, our next story is also about the Subterraneans, which maybe I should have introduced more, but Subterraneans could be dwarves, but it isn't exclusively that, especially in German. There's a lot of mythos about cities underground, basically. Usually they have their own suns. Sometimes they're completely underwater. Sometimes they are, just basically another version of the land above. We saw a version of that in our Norwegian tale a couple of weeks ago. except that was under the sea. But still, it was a place that was dry and whatever else. Anyways, this story takes a format that we saw. If you folks have been with the channel long enough, you will have seen it in a few different places, but the most, I did a show, one of my personal favorites that I've done on Tir na Nog, which is a Irish subterranean place, usually under lakes. I think almost exclusively under lakes. And I mentioned that also there is a version of this tale that I'm going to read now, or at least in its base format, in its base conceit, that exists also in Japanese folklore. It's probably the closest to a very traditional tale tonight, and it is one of my favorite. Uncle Kitty says, spectacularly unsavage goose. That's true. Well, they can't all be Canadian geese. Murder birds. Oh, Janera. Hello. Good to see you. Thank you for dropping by. Our next story is called A Girl Ventures into the Realm of the Subterraneans. It also comes to us translated by Jürgen Hubert, and it is a story of a familiar format in folklore. See if you can identify it. A subterranean woman was once caught by the milkmaid when she was stealing milk. A conversation ensued, and the little woman suggested to the girl that she should follow her into the underworld, the subterranean. But she should remember to put on her jacket, for it was cold down there. Well, the girl let herself be talked into this, climbed down together with the subterranean woman, and soon they reached the most beautiful garden, in which the girl had full freedom to entertain herself. In particular, she liked a bird which flew up just ahead of her and then settled down again when it had flown for a short distance. And the girl attempted to capture that beautiful animal, but no matter how often she tried to grab it, it escaped again. And the same game began anew. Finally, enough time had passed for the maiden, and she went back to the subterranean woman and asked to be let back to the upper world. The little woman who had let her down here immediately offered her services as a guide, and as soon they had come close to the exit. But in front of it there was a heap of rubbish, and the subterranean woman prompted the maiden to scoop the rubbish into her apron, carry it back to her home. Then both of them gave their farewells, and the girl went on into her house. But it was there she discovered, to her amazement, that instead of the rubbish, there were now numerous shiny silver and golden coins. But she was even more astonished that in her home she saw neither her parents nor her siblings, but only the faces of complete strangers. She asked after her king, but everyone claimed that they had never heard of those. Finally, she was sent to the police, and then it was discovered that the girl in question had vanished from this world more than 100 years ago, and that she was considered missing since that time. And if you missed it, the subterranean world is usually a beautiful place, and often they want you to stay, but time travels differently there, always. in the case of Tir na Nog, it depends, but it's usually about a day to a century, and sometimes they come back 300 years later, not realizing it had only been 3 days. Not realizing that because it had only been 3 days in Tir na Nog. Janera says, I'd love a Has-Been Hotel as well. Well, welcome to the Has-Been Hotel fan club. That is my live chat. GS says, movies have used that storyline. Have they? I don't know a movie that's used it. I know I've seen it in like sci-fi where like they go away and they don't realize how long they've been gone. There's actually a delightful inversion on that trope. In the form of a Queen song. There's another story, so maybe I shouldn't tell you this, but I don't want to get off track. But there's a Queen song from, I think it's actually from Night at the Opera. And it's about, it was written by the guitarist Brian May, who has a degree in astrophysics, a PhD in astrophysics. And it's about the phenomenon of traveling at close to the speed of light and time traveling different for you and coming back home and finding that everyone has aged beyond you. So I guess not an inversion, just a different version of that story. Uncle Kitty said there are a few movies, but the names aren't coming to mind. Yeah, I don't know. Janera says, I'm definitely Ace. Well, you're in good company here, because as we found out on Thursday, a good deal of the chat is Ace, Arrow, or both. All right. Witchery says, I believe in the Titanic, one of the women below deck is telling her babies about Tir na Nog. Oh, is she? Oh, well, that is so lovely in a dark way, but I didn't know that. Makes sense. Okay. Now, the last story of the night is a peculiar one. It doesn't fully fit our theme, but it also, I've had it hanging around in my back pocket for a while, and it just doesn't fit any theme. It's closest to this, because it is about other realms, other spaces. But there's two reasons it's strange. The concept of it is strange, but the morality of the tale, the fact that it kind of doesn't have one, is strange as well. So for our last story tonight is this very peculiar and strangely more metaphorical and imagery based than most folklore is, called the Switched Lifelight. So I may have a drink of water and we'll go into it. Witchery says she was trying to tell them they'd have a place to go. That makes sense, because Tir na Nog was, well, often below lakes, but in some accounts just below big bodies of water in general. I think in the list of my favorite like folklore things, Tir na Nog is pretty high up. It's one of my favorites. Our last story of the evening is called The Switched Lifelight. It also comes to us from Jürgen Hubert, who is a translator of German folklore, who you can support at his Patreon, Sunken Castles Evil Poodles, in the pinned comment below. Now, once a man was suffering from a deep illness, and the physician had already given up on him. In his mortal fear, he fetched for a certain old woman and sought her advice and aid. She did indeed console him with the knowledge that he did not have to give up all hope. For if he were to manage to switch his life light, he would become healthier than ever before. However, otherwise, he would be doomed to die. Astonished, the man asked what the life light was, and listened to the explanation that every person had such a light. As long as this light burns, this person continues to live, and as soon as it expires, the person will expire as well. The woman, likewise, knew about the place where those lights burned. The sick man should stand up from his bed, no matter how painful this would be, and walk straight ahead into a certain direction until he finally got there. As soon as he had reached this location, he should seek out his own light and exchange it with the light of a child. In this manner, the child would die once the lifeline of the sick man had sputtered out, but he himself would live as long as the child had been supposed to live. The man did as he was told. He rose up from his bed and wandered straight ahead. In the beginning, it was extremely arduous, and part of the way he even had to crawl on all fours. But finally he reached his desired destination. Many, many lights burned there, and he likely would have never found his own life light, if there hadn't been a friendly old man there who showed it to him. It burned weakly now, but close to it, there was a large, long, and brightly burning child's light. Quickly, he grabbed it and switched the locations of the two lights, and as soon as he had done so, he was hale and healthy again and could go homewards, fresh and chipper. However, the child whose lifelight he had taken died that very next day. And that's it. So long as the light burns, the person will live, but once it goes out, the person will die. Okay, so no points for originality. Well, I mean, I think you get points for originality when you predate most written literature. This is not a new tale. Jumpstore says, "Lol zombie, I was thinking of Charmander's tail flame." For those who don't know, Charmander is a Pokemon, and he has a little fire on his tail. And if you really don't know Pokemon, then what you don't know is that most of them have horrifyingly weird and terrifying backstories that obviously are very influenced by folklore, just in their form, not in their literal details, because if his tail flame gets extinguished, he just dies. That's it. He's just dead. Tammy's asking to see my hair. Let's keep that to Thursday. How about that? Genera said, so the older stealing from the younger only to doom them both. Yes. Yeah. I think there's a couple of interesting ideas at play in this one. The first is one that I'll admit I didn't think of right away, but I saw in Jurgen's notes, which is that it does seem to establish an idea of like a kind of fate. That there are prescribed lifetimes. But I think for me, what's interesting is the idea that like there is a finite resource of life. And the only way you can get more of it is by sort of soaking it out of something else, right? Like that life force is extended by sort of tearing it away from other things. And I won't be too literal about that. Um, but I do think there's something metaphorically interesting about that. You know. Tammy says something to look forward to on Thursday. Yeah, absolutely. I think it would just be confusing. This is my Marpo faced stream, I suppose. Uncle Kitty says, I might not be here Thursday. I'm getting minor eye surgery. Is there even such a thing as minor eye surgery? All eye surgery is life-shatteringly uncomfortable and intrusive. I'm sorry to hear that you have to go through that, Uncle Kitty. GS says that he would that he'd choose a child who was only going to live a couple of more hours. Missed opportunity. Yeah, I suppose that is perhaps the most... I won't put too much of a fine point on it. Whatever that makes you... whatever you make of that. Like, I feel like this is not a story that asks for me to give it too much structure and context. I think it's something that works regardless of the generation it's read in. And I think there's something to that, because the other thing that is really interesting there is that nobody's guaranteed life. Youth doesn't give you life. Fate and circumstances have their role. It's not clear that he was even punished. He might have been tricked, because nobody seemed to stop him from switching his lights, right? So maybe they just knew he wasn't a deserving man. Anyways. I'm pretty sure I've never read that before, but if I have and you have a great memory, I apologize. I have read it so many times personally, going, is this the show that I could fit it into? That I simply do not remember what I've read on here anymore. Yeah, I've really liked that tale, and I'm glad I had a chance to read it. Okay. It's been a little bit all over the place on this stream. I don't know why. Just the mood of the day. What I will say, though, is thank you very much for everybody who came along. I'm sorry for my wishy-washy opinions on Has-Been Hotel, and why can I never hold the name in my head of the other one? I just can't. Witchery says, have you ever read The Buried Moon? I'm weirdly attached to that. I don't know. Let me Google it. Oh yeah, you guys were talking about a cartoon last week. I went and looked it up, and I absolutely do know it. It has a bunch of alligators in it. I'm just gonna look up now before I forget. Buried Moon. Definitely don't know it. Oh, but I might have it, because Joseph Jacobs, I have pretty much every book he ever did. So I'll take a look. Oh, you're right. Zombie Wolf. Zombie Wolf has a legal and moral responsibility to tell us nonsense trivia. So Zombie Wolf, let's go out on your trivia. And Jumpstore says, thanks for the stream, Rory. See you Thursday. Thank you, Jumpstore, for coming along and joining in. Tammy says, tonight was great. Can't wait for Thursday. Had a great time in the street. Good night, all. I hope you enjoy Has-Been Hotel, Tammy. I did see the message. I didn't really mention it at the time. Okay. Oh, it's up chat. Where? Are you saying that Witcher already did a fun trivia? I don't see it. Although I see that Zombie Wolf predicted the ending. Watch him swap the light with a terminally ill child's light. That's exactly what happened. There we are. I don't know, Zombie Wolf. I don't think I'm gonna go out on that one. It's in chat if you guys want to read it. Not on the cozy stream. The nonetheless, I thank you very much for watching, everybody. I'm sorry I got myself a little distracted there, but I'm sure if you're not a part of the chat, you've probably already tuned out. As for me, I will keep the fire going for you. You have a good sleep.